All right, let's dive right into this explainer on the expert behind modern throw-ins. So picture this, it's the scorching summer of 2018, and a Danish guy driving through the countryside is flat out ignoring a desperate plus 44 phone call because, well, he thinks it's just a telemarketer. But that caller? It was actually Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp, and he was frantically calling to completely revolutionize an aspect of the game that honestly everyone else had just forgotten about.
So why the frantic call? Well, think about this for a second. There are roughly 40 throw-ins per match. 40. That makes it literally the most common restart in the entire sport. Yet somehow, incredibly, it was treated as a complete afterthought for over a century. I mean, 99% of professional players and coaches had never even practiced them at a high level.
In fact, it was so disrespected that prominent football figures wanted to scrap it completely. Arsene Wenger actually advocated for abolishing them, famously saying throw-ins should be replaced with kick-ins. People just wanted to get the ball back into play and move on, totally blind to this massive strategic goldmine, just sitting right there on the touchline.
And you want to see the immediate paradigm shift once Klopp finally made that phone call? This is wild. Before bringing in a specialist, Liverpool was the third worst team in the Premier League at keeping possession under pressure from throw-ins, sitting at a pretty dismal 45.4%. After just one season with a dedicated coach, bam, they jumped up to 68.4%, making them the absolute second best in all of Europe.
Section 1. The predecessor, brute force.
Now, before the modern tactical revolution, we definitely have to talk about Rory Delap. This guy used raw physics to absolutely terrify defenses. Playing for Stoke City, he would launch these 50-mile-per-hour javelin-like flat throws up to 40 meters right into the box. And here's the real kicker. You literally cannot be ruled offside from a throw-in. So Delap essentially turned this totally mundane restart into an expected goals machine, generating 0.3 xG per throw and creating absolute chaos.
Okay, moving on to Section 2. Enter the throw-in coach.
So while Delap relied on, sheer brute force, the modern evolution needed something a lot more nuanced. Enter Thomas Grønnemark, the true expert behind modern throw-ins, and yep, the very guy Klopp was desperately trying to call. Just look at this eccentric timeline. He went from developing a throw-in course in 2004 to being a brakeman for the Danish bobsleigh team in 2006 to literally holding a 51.33-meter flip throw world record in 2010, all before Liverpool ever hired him in 2018. He wasn't your typical football tactician, right? He was a specialist in human mechanics.
Grønnemark quickly realized that getting the most out of this set piece wasn't just about launching the ball deep like Delap did. Instead, his entire philosophy was built on mastering three very distinct pillars: the long throw, the fast throw, and the clever throw.
And honestly, the absolute most revolutionary of these is the clever throw. Grønnemark essentially had to coach pure football intelligence. He was out there teaching seasoned professionals how to manufacture space and manipulate defenses using highly coordinated team movements. So instead of just blindly tossing the ball down the line in a total panic, it was all about empowering the players with real options and smart decision-making frameworks.
All right, Section 3, the tactical blueprint.
So how do you actually execute this on the pitch? Well, it all starts with the clock. Tick-tock. 5 seconds. That is the strict optimal time limit for a fast throw. The whole principle is super simple but incredibly effective. Whoever is closest to the ball when it goes out has to immediately trigger the sequence to catch the defense while they're disorganized. If you wait past those 5 seconds, the window slams shut. But hey, if they can't play it fast, teams like Liverpool deploy some really strict geometric spacing. First, they create a half-circle shape around the thrower. This gives multiple passing options without crowding the space. Then, they drop the center forward deep just to pin those defenders back. And critically, they use sideways horizontal movements. This stops defenders from pressing the thrower head-on and completely opens up those vital passing lanes.
And these little mechanical tweaks, they aren't just chalkboard theory. Take Andy Robertson, for example. By extending his throwing range from a meager 19 meters by adding nearly 8 more meters, he increased his effective passing radius by over 500 square meters. I mean, think about that. That is a massive, massive increase in options for a single player just by fixing his throwing technique. Which brings us to Section 4, defending the aerial threat. Naturally, football is a game of constant action and reaction, right? As possession-heavy teams started turning throws into structured set pieces that honestly looked like corner kicks, defenses had to fight back with data.
Looking at the spatial distribution from Huddle Performance Insights, we can clearly see how heavily these long throws cluster symmetrically, right between the 6-yard line and the penalty spot. This totally exposes the physical limitations of the throwers. They can only chuck it so far, and that creates a highly predictable drop zone for analysts to study and defend against.
But make no mistake, the threat is still very real. While almost 78% of these long throws result in absolutely no outcome within 15 seconds, roughly 1 in 6 leads to a highly dangerous shot or even a goal. That is a 14.7% chance for a shot and a 1.8% chance for a goal, proving they're a totally viable attacking threat that defenses simply cannot afford to sleep on.
So how do you survive the chaos? Well, analysts are now giving defenses a very specific checklist to mitigate the risk. First, avoid conceding throws deep in your own half altogether. Second, anchor centrally with about 5 to 6 defenders. Third, maintain extreme compactness for at least 6 seconds post-contact. Fourth, intentionally clear the ball directionally back toward the sidelines, not vertically. And finally, keep your goalkeeper in a conservative, patient position.
So what does this all mean? Well, Grønnemark proved that a totally ignored 140-year-old mechanic could literally be transformed into a title-winning weapon. And as the modern game ruthlessly optimizes every single second, it really leaves you wondering, what overlooked rule or what seemingly mundane part of the sport is going to be weaponized next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will leave you to ponder that one.